Yeah. I'm gonna buy that one and that one. All of it. I need it all. Do you want it though? Where do I begin? I see the hate, they don't wanna see me win. Bank deposits, I got more coming in. Top down, throw the money in the wind. I don't want it all. Heard the scammer had to switch up the accounts. Moving paper, gotta call it my account. It's all in, I can have it coming out. Been through the struggle, I can see another drought. Yeah, it's not a purse, it's a merge, 6 figures.
Hey guys, welcome to another session of Educators Roundtable. I know you're thinking, like, where is Christine today? Well, Christine is actually at a speaking engagement, so I wanted to make sure we made this session of Educators Roundtable. You know, a lot of things are really important to me, and you know how important education is for me, especially to students. But it's going to go beyond that, this conversation today. This conversation is going to lend itself to what does it look like for a student every day, just battling traditional education on top of understanding and identifying who they are. Let's not forget what was it like for us in elementary, middle school, and high school, where you were trying to find out whether you wanted to be in the in crowd or whether you wanted to be with the girls with the pink hair or the guys that wear the really cool sneakers. Well, just think about if you were really trying to figure out who you were internally and physically. If you were deciding how does this all look to everyone else and how do I feel about what I think about myself, that's a lot for a student to manage and also keep up with algebra, trigonometry, chemistry, learning how to write, grammar, debate. I don't know. This is like the big conversation. So today, as always, you guys know my co-host, Shannon is here. And Shannon, we're going to talk about this hot topic because our LGBT community and all people, when you say that, they always think of adults and they never think about the students and what's going on with our babies. So today, we're going to talk about that. How's it look for you guys in New York?
So New York is incredibly progressive and in the realm of policy, supports, curriculum, inclusive curriculum, organizations. There are tons of really, I think, thoughtful approaches that are brought to bear on in service of these students. However, we're still not there with many other things, but there is a conscious effort and there is real conversation and moving forward in order to really, I think, see, hear, and meet the needs of these students.
Well, I'm really excited. We have an expert, and I'm going to tell you, she's an absolutely amazing woman. What she does at the Ruth Ellis Center in Detroit, Michigan is amazing. The services that they provide. So I'm not going to hold this up. I think she's a rock star, and she's really helping a lot of our students in the LGBT community. Welcome, Kathie, to Educators Roundtable. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Christine, for having me. I'm really excited about being a part of tonight's session.
Well, I'm more excited to have you. So, everybody knows, like, when I start the session out, I just kind of want to get into, because we got a lot to buckle down. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, what do you think about the students managing traditional education and puberty on top of growing into their identity? What do you think about that, Kathie?
I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot to manage. I think it's a lot to deal with, especially in the time we're in today. It can be a lot. You started off talking about trying to learn algebra and trying to figure out who you are. I think that's a lot to manage today.
It is. I think, from a perspective, I know when I was in elementary, middle school, I was thinking I wanted to be some science geek, but I also wanted to be Cyndi Lauper, right? So I just thought that was a big thing to figure out. What about you, Shannon? When our students are trying to manage that whole thing with traditional education and they're growing into their puberty, we're going to get into some other stuff. I didn't have a chest until high school. I didn't even know what was happening when other girls were blossoming. Here I was, padding, you know what I mean? So and people kind of tease me about that, right? So there you go. So what do you think about that, Shannon, as our kids are trying to battle that whole thing right now?
I want to first off thank you for just really being vulnerable enough to share that with us. But secondarily, now at more than any point in human history, students have access to information unparalleled. They've got these phones in their pockets with access to all information, right?
Right.
And they have very little supports to help them filter all the information. So it's almost like trying to drink from a water hose and a fire hose. And you've got all this information, but we don't have enough, I think, kind of wise guides helping the youth really navigate everything that they're encountering. And I think it can be, it's a blessing and a curse, but it's so dangerous because the internet also opens these young folks up to bullying and all the things that go along with that. So, but there's great information, but I think you have to have a guide. You have to have a guide. Absolutely.
And I totally agree with you. I was bullied as a kid. They used to call me Casper the Friendly Ghost because I was lighter. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying, when you're being teased about traditional things, right? Don't even put into the equation, you're not really clear on who you are and who you want to be on top of that. Like, that's a lot. So I know, Kathie, for you, it's like, that's like a real hot topic when the babies come to you or in general. I mean, what was it like for you in high school? Did you already know in elementary, middle school, high school who you wanted to be, what you wanted to do?
No, bullying at any level, no matter if it was in the 70s or if it was in the 90s, it's a hard thing to manage.
Right.
For me, high school was if I could go back to any age, let me just start here. It would not be middle age. It would not be middle school.
Yeah.
I think that was the worst time of my life. I think I was bullied more in middle school than any other time. I have a very curvy body and I was really teased about it. Now it's looked at differently. One thing about tables, they always turn, don't they, Christine?
Don't they?
So I'm just saying, we did not have to deal with all of the things we have now. We didn't have cell phones in our pockets. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Facebook. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have those things that would make it so easy to be bullied so quickly. So bullying for us was just like, oh, somebody teased me at school today. You cry about it on the way home or on the bus home, and then you tell your parents about it, and then you overcome it at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that today. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's just a lot to deal with. And I know when you start to think about bullying, nobody ever thinks about cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is a big deal. Actually, it's such a big deal that in 2019, Youth Risk Behavior Surveys show that students that self-identified as gay, lesbian, or bisexual, 32% of them were bullied on school property. And of the 32%, 26.6% of students were cyberbullied in 2019. So it's a big deal. And those numbers are really high. And it's very concerning.
So, and I always tell people there's a larger picture equation to what happens in a youth's life, right? And so I often think back when I was a teacher and talking to students, and I used to say to them all the time, okay, this is what happened to me, but let me understand where you're coming from. And I think a lot of times when you're in the classroom or you're looking at it from that perspective, I remember a principal saying, well, why do we have to have different bathrooms now? And I said, well, think about it from this perspective. It's understanding if this person has decided to shift the physical of who they are, think about their comfort level. And I said, so let's transition that to a point where women used to go into a regular bathroom to nurse their babies. So now you have family bathrooms now, even, at the airport, restaurants, everybody has it where you can change your baby's diaper. So I said, things have shifted. There was a time where you couldn't breastfeed in public. And I kept telling people, this is the same thing. This LGBT community didn't just come along at this point. They've been here, but they've just been kind of working and weaving themselves in a heterosexual environment and just accepting how they maneuver and respond to things. And I think back to a young man when I was in high school, he was very indifferent and I didn't understand him, but he used to dress in a very unique way, but he used to wear makeup. And Prince was really big then. So we didn't really think about it because we were thinking, oh, he's with the Prince Revolution people, but he wasn't. Because now that I see him later in life, he's made the complete transition over. He's no longer him, he's a her. So you know what I mean? He just kind of fit in that mold. And do you find that a lot of students are doing that? They just kind of fit into a mold so that they don't cause a lot of attraction or attention from other people?
That is called gender expression. It's a difference between gender expression and gender identity. Gender expression is how people identify or communicate through their appearance, their behavior, or their clothing. Gender identity, is an internal sense of being male or female or something else. And that person has to self-identify as that. What we do a lot of times is we get caught up in what we see in front of us, and address people by what we see. And I have to say today, that's not a safe thing to do. It's a such thing that's called SOGI terms. SOGI stands for sexual orientation, gender, identity, expression. And it's a whole list of terms. One of the things when you're talking about youth and you're talking about gay, straight, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, we have to meet them where they are with their own terminology in their own language. I think that's one of the things that is very, very, very important to do. When you start talking about LGBTQ plus people, you want to make sure that you're not using language that's offensive. You want to make sure that you're meeting them where they are and that you're not offending anybody because you don't know any better. So you're absolutely right. I think education comes first before anything, and we do whatever we need to do to educate ourselves and our families.
Okay, so I'm going to say this to you guys. That's the reason why we're having this podcast today. I think this podcast will be out there for people to understand what it is that they need to do in the terminology that needs to be used moving forward to make sure that this is not happening. One of the things that Shannon and I talked about before we go to commercial, he was saying that they don't see themselves in the curriculum. And Shannon, you can provide more information on that. That it's a little, disconcerting when you don't see yourself in the different curriculum or conversations out there. So Shannon, what were your thoughts on that?
I think we have a tendency to separate, and it's a sliding scale. So you have these moments in time where we acknowledge certain populations, and that acknowledgement shifts sometimes to inclusion, sometimes to addition, but ultimately we need to really see ourselves as a singular body supporting all that come to our table. And just on a really quick note, in 2019, 2020, New York City Department of Education actually made it possible for students to change their name, change their gender on their own. That's an option. And they really have done a good job of providing guidelines to support transgender and gender expansive students. And so there's some ways in which they've been really supporting these students, and they've provided staff and students with guidelines on gender inclusion. So they've been working. Like I said, I think it's been progressive in theory, but it just I think it's a lot of it comes from a singular space, and now it's up to the organization to really ensure that those students who have those experiences are really fully supported.
You know what? And I love that you guys are managing that. It is really difficult. And I say that a lot of times it's really difficult for students to speak up. And sometimes when they don't have the support at home with their parents, that's another difficult situation. So not only are they dealing with school, they're dealing with home as well. So in our next half, guys, we're going to really talk about what amazing things that Kathie does over at the Ruth Ellis. And I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear all about it. So when we come back, you'll see Shannon and you'll see Kathie, and they're going to talk through the different things that she's doing over there at the Ruth Ellis Center. And then I'm going to join you guys back for the last 15 minutes because I want the focus to be on Kathie and not on Christine. This is really about providing and ensuring our LGBT youth community knows that they have a place to go and someone that can hear their voice. And at the end, if you guys are interested in talking to Kathie on how you can do this in your school district, feel free to contact her. We're going to leave all of her contact information on our site for you guys to reach out to her. So let's go to our commercial and we'll see you guys back in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day.
Welcome back. So, Kathie, it's just you and I. So, hopefully, I do a great job and I do the team proud. I want to give you an opportunity. I just want to say thank you again for being with us. But I want to give you a chance to really speak to the services that are provided to the youth at the Ruth Ellis Center.
Thanks so much, Shannon. Again, thank you for having me. And I'm really, really excited to talk about what I do at the Ruth Ellis Center. The program that I run is called the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls, which the focus is exactly that, women and girls. We do a number of things. So one of the things that I would like to start talking about is we're in 3 Detroit public schools right now. One is Detroit School of the Arts, Northern High School, Central High School, well, 4, and Detroit International Academy for Young Women. And we have an outreach program that goes into the school and talk about safe spaces, us creating safe spaces for women. And that's exactly what the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls do. It's a drop-in center. It's a drop-in center for youth to actually come and be themselves. Our mission statement is so funny, Shannon, because I was looking over some paperwork today, and our mission statement is the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls mission is to inspire, build confidence, and empower lesbian and queer young women to love themselves and to speak in their truth. And that's what we're here to do. And so I'm so glad to be able to talk about some of the services that we provide tonight. You want me to go ahead and get started?
Dude, but let me ask you a question, because you mentioned safe spaces. What exactly, how do you define that? What does that mean, and how does that look?
A safe space is creating a space for a young woman or a girl to come to and be herself, somewhere that's safe from harm, from haters, as the kids would say, from just to be able to come and drop in and be them in the fullness of who they are.
Let me ask you one more question. You mentioned that you were in a few schools. Can you talk about how those relationships came about and how you kind of navigated that space? Because I think oftentimes we hear about services being offered to students, but we don't hear kind of the back end. Like how did that come to be?
So Detroit Public Schools decided that they had a lot of students that were a percentage of their students were identifying as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or non-binary, or even transgender. And they wanted to figure out, because they weren't the experts, what they can do to make those students feel included. What could they do to make those students be safe while on school property? And so they came to the Ruth Ellis Center and said, listen, we don't know a lot about this. Actually, we don't know anything about it. What can you do for us? And one of the things that one of the programs that the Ruth Ellis Center has is a program called the Institute. And the Institute is a group of people that go into the community and they educate school systems and different organizations on what it means to be a LGBTQ person. What does that look like? What language is not offensive? How can we keep those people in work or at school safe? And so we go into the community and we do the education and do the work. And that's how it got started.
Got it. Okay, so thank you for that piece. I'm definitely interested in hearing about a little bit more of the services that you're offering, ladies.
Okay. So the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls have 5 areas of service. The first area is education and employment and career building. We are very, very big on education. We have an after-school tutoring program that's ran virtually now because of COVID. But before COVID, it was a face-to-face after-school tutoring program for youth between the ages of 13 to 17. We have volunteer teachers that come in and provide extra learning or extra skills to students that are suffering in math and or reading. We also have a career and employment building program, which teach you what to wear to a job interview, how to apply for a job, what my resume should look like, and actually how to write a resume. So that's the first area of service. The next one is arts and culture. We have open mic night. We have spoken word that we offer, art therapy, African drumming circles. So students can come any day that those programs are being offered and participate in the arts and culture portion of the CLQ. CLQ is for the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls. We also have parenting support, parenting classes, for parents that children identify as LGBTQ plus and they don't know what to do, they don't understand it, they don't know anything about it. And listen, we're not even with that gay stuff. So what is this about? We have a support group where you can talk to other parents that's going through the same issues or having the same questions and share information that way. And we also have parenting support for LGBTQ students or young people who are parents. We have a diaper pantry where low-income students can come every single month and pick up a certain amount of diapers for their child, free of charge, with no questions asked. We also have a community resource component. And I think, Shannon, this is my favorite component. And the reason being is because community resources are so important. We have a computer lab, which is one of our community resources that young women can come to and use our internet services and use our computers to do homework. A lot of people don't have the internet in their home. We take for granted something as simple as the internet. But a lot of students in the Detroit public school system is actually struggling with online learning because they can't afford the internet. We're talking anywhere from $30 to $70, and that's another bill, and they just can't afford it. So they can come to the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls daily and go to school online and use our internet service and use our computers. We also have a feminine hygiene pantry. I'm sorry, you wanted to ask something about that?
Nope, you're good. Yep. Nope. Keep on.
Okay. We also have a feminine hygiene pantry where young women can come and get free feminine hygiene products, pads, tampons, and liners, free of charge every single month. Those things can add up. So that program is ran strictly on donations. Every single month, a young lady can come and get the things that she actually needs to take care of herself physically at our location, free of charge. I talked about the diaper pantry. I talked about the feminine hygiene pantry. And we also have a clothing closet. A lot of times students are bused to school or walking to school and they don't have appropriate clothing. Well, they can come to our organization and get warm winter items, hat, scarf, gloves, socks, coats, and things of that nature, free of charge, no questions asked. That's why the community resource portion of the program is one of my favorite, because before we get into education, we try to meet clients and students where they are. We have to meet their immediate needs, food, shelter, and clothing first, before they can go on and think about education or anything like that. We also have a health and wellness component, behavior health as well as physical health. So a student can come by appointment and sign up and speak to a therapist about anything that they want to. And the therapist is willing to work around the student's school schedule. We also work very closely with Henry Ford Medical Center. We have an in-house clinic where they can come and get treated for STD, take a pregnancy test, anything from hormones to anything that they need. And the medication is given right there on site, and they can talk to a doctor or nurse right there on site. So those 5 components, and that is our focus with our students.
So you've given me a lot, and we'll just take it at from the top at the beginning.
Okay.
And you mentioned just education, employment, and career building. Can you speak a little bit more about how you support students with their studies, with their coursework? I know you mentioned tutoring, and as you speak to that, can you talk to how COVID potentially changed the way you deliver services to the community?
COVID really changed the entire programming for the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls, because what we had to do was try to figure out a way to still stay engaged with clients and still promote programming. And one of the things we had to do was move a lot of our programming from face-to-face to virtual. And again, you always have the struggle of people not having laptops in their homes and people not having internet service in their homes. Again, a lot of us take those things for granted, but a lot of our students, especially in the area that we're located in, is a very impoverished area. And a lot of people don't have the necessary things that they need in order to stay linked in, to stay in touch and stay in contact. So what we started to do was, after the shutdown, we started to open up by appointment only. So students that wanted to use the computer and wanted to use the laptop, we would only have so many students in the actual drop-in center at a time. They would have to sign up, get their temperature taken, go through the whole COVID questionnaire and all of that kind of stuff. And so that we were still able to service those students, because they still had homework assignments. They still had things that they were responsible for. And we just really tried to assist them as best as we could during COVID.
Got it. With respect to the support with employment, do you have partners that you work with that you're really like, are these internships? Are these just jobs that students kind of jump into? Who are you working with, and what are some of the opportunities for some of these students?
They are internships. We have, because we are linked in with Detroit Public Schools, we have a social worker that actually manages students that want an internship at the center. So we link them up with the social worker, and she does all the behind the scenes paperwork that's necessary for them to actually have an internship. So we work with 3 different companies. One is TD Automotive. One of them is Mercedes-Benz. We were working with them pre-COVID, and another one is Blue Cross Blue Shield. We were working with them as well before COVID. And they came in and they started to, and another one, and I hate to bring this up, but it's true, is a lot of cannabis agencies were coming to us looking for interns, and so that minorities could learn the behind the scenes business for cannabis. And so about 3 different agencies came to us because they wanted to hire minorities and they wanted to hire LGBTQ people. And so we let them in, we sent them through the training, the whole LGBTQ safety and all of that, and linked different students up to different agencies.
Okay. And you with that, you've got a career building component that supports with the resume writing and all those pieces, correct?
Correct. We have retired volunteer teachers that come in and teach students how to write resumes, what they do mock interview sessions. They talk about what you should look like when showing up at a interview, because believe it or not, students don't know that. That's something that's not taught in Detroit Public Schools. Students show up in jeans and students show up in tennis shoes to a job interview. And so we have volunteers that come in and actually train students on what the appropriate attire would look like and how to actually write a resume and a cover letter and why it's important.
So you spoke to arts and culture, and you specifically referenced art therapy. Sounds like something I should be getting into in my life, but can you tell me just a little bit more about that?
So we have, again, volunteers that come in and teach an art therapy class once a week to students that's interested in art therapy. They come in, we provide all the supplies necessary that the students would need to continue with the class, and they have an art therapy class. I'm not in it. I'm more of a spoken word open mic girl because they do that as well. Yeah,
like with the
yes. Okay. So the spoken word community is a whole deep underground community, and we have some youth that is very, very, very into that. And so we actually try to host the open word mic night quarterly at the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls, and it is a wonderful time and a wonderful turnout.
With the African drum circles, are we doing the drumming ourselves in the space, or are we like actually?
We have a teacher. We have a teacher that's actually coming in and teaching drumming circles. So we have students that sign up for that, and that class is on Saturdays. They have a student teacher that's actually teaching drumming, and they're participating, and we actually have the drums available for them to learn on and take out and take home. And we actually, and I forgot to mention this of one of our services, we also have a lesbian and queer in-house library. So they can take out books, they can take instruments home, bring them back, sign them out, bring them back. Yeah.
Wow. You mentioned something when you spoke to some of the challenges around kind of working virtually. Mm-hmm. And really it's the lack of internet connectivity. And that's something that I think we are seeing in every major urban area, especially so in New York, for example, we distributed a little over 500,000 web-enabled devices. However, there are certain areas, shelters, students couldn't, they didn't work. I mean, and the infrastructure just wasn't in place in order to make that happen. Are there any potential partnership opportunities within the Detroit area to bring kind of Wi-Fi to those houses? I know that when I worked in Detroit, we had a partnership with Comcast, and they all of the students could get like I want to say low high speed internet for like $9 a month. But we struggle with that because those households have like a bad cable bill or somebody else. Like it was. So are there any potentially new partnerships that can be developed in order to bring the resources to those families, or is that still kind of a conversation with you and the team?
Unfortunately, Shannon, it's still a conversation. I know that the Ruth Ellis Center doesn't, but the Detroit Public School System has been diligently working on trying to make the connection with different companies to address the barriers and the needs of low-income students and students in general to make those things happen. It's still a conversation. It's still a barrier. It's still a challenge. That's why it's so important that a place like the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls is open so that students know that Monday through Friday and some Saturdays, depending on, what's going on, that they can drop in and use the internet and use the computers that we have, because it's still just a conversation and it's definitely still a barrier and a challenge.
You mentioned parenting support for the parents. Can you just speak a little to that? Because I think especially in just folks of color, Black folks, brown folks. I mean, that's a conversation, and I think for some parents, it's a very real one. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how you approach that, how you support parents, and ways that other organizations could begin to do some of that same work?
It's still a hot topic. It still can be challenging. Usually the parents reach out to the school and the school reach out to us, or the student reach out to the school and the school reach out to us and say, hey, we have this issue. So-and-so is being kicked out of his home because he just came out, or she's kicked out of her home because her parents are a very religious family and they don't, agree with her life or her lifestyle. And so we only intervene at the point where the parent is given our resource and our information, and they reach out to us. We don't take it upon ourselves and reach out to the parent and say, hey, we're here and this is what we do. We allow the parent to reach out to us. So once the parent reach out to us, we start setting up some type of appointment with our in-house therapist, and then we try to move them into some type of parenting support group, and where other parents are going through the same thing and have the same type of questions. And one of the things that I love about that support group is parent ran and parent led. So we kind of move out the way. We facilitate, of course, to make sure all the conversations are healthy conversations, but it's parent taught and parent led. So I love that about that, because parents share a commonality, and that is, I have this gay child, I'm not with it, what's really going on, type of thing. So,
however, they are willing to engage in dialogue.
They are willing
to be heard and learn, right? These aren't
Absolutely.
the don't talk to me parents.
No, it's not. Anytime a parent contacts us, they really are being proactive in trying to navigate through whatever it is that them and their child is going through.
You mentioned parenting support for students who are parents. What percentage of the students would you say are parents themselves? And in addition to kind of the free diapers, what additional supports do you potentially offer those students?
So the percentage of students that we have that are parents, believe it or not, it's about 3%. And it's very few, but it is students that are parents that still identify as LGBTQ plus people. So outside of the diaper support, diaper pantry, we offer childcare resources during school hours. We also offer a therapist. A therapist comes with every service that we actually provide because we have a whole behavioral health team. So clothing, food, whatever it is that the person needs, we try to address the immediate need of the client.
Got it. So, all right, let me make sure I got this piece here. So we've got we've got education, employment, and career building, arts and culture, parent support, parenting for students, and also we have a kind of community resource. This is one of your favorite parts here. Just the lab, the internet, the donations, the clothing closet, the warm winter items, all of those pieces. Can you speak a little bit more about that? And about how you're making that work? I know you mentioned donations. Are these private donations? Do you have corporate sponsors?
They are 90% of our community resources are ran off donations through private donors.
Really?
Yes, we do have some corporate sponsors that.
I got to ask, how are you managing a program in multiple buildings, serving the needs of I'm sure, a pretty good population of kids with just private donors? I mean, how long have you been doing this work?
This particular program, the women's program, is a new program. It's only 2 years old. Okay. So the other programs are ran, of course, through state and government grant.
Okay.
My program is ran off a state and government grant as well, but as far as the community resources, those resources are strictly from private donors. So our feminine hygiene pantry, our diaper pantry, we have some wonderful people that give every single month and every single year to the Ruth Ellis Center and want their money to be allocated for women and children. And
wow.
And that's who we depend on. And so a lot of those community resources are ran 100% off donations. So every year I'm out begging for warm winter items, feminine hygiene products, as well as and this is what I forgot to mention. They can also come to the center and wash their clothes. We have a program called Wash Your Load Wednesdays. So we have a washer and dryer, commercial washer and dryer that was donated by an organization who actually put washers and dryers in the laundromat. So students can come to us every single Wednesday and wash up to 2 loads of clothes for free. And we provide the detergent.
I was going to ask you about that detergent, Kathie.
We provide the detergent, the bleach, and the dryer sheets. And believe it or not, those donations of detergent comes from private donors.
Wow.
So and that program is ran 100% off donations.
I was doing some research, and this was a couple of years ago, and Detroit is one of the most generous cities in the country. I mean, you say what?
If they like you.
True. But no one gives money to people. Well, I don't even want to get into that.
Right.
So that's awesome. That is awesome. Can you and you mentioned health and wellness, and really you mentioned the therapist, and then kind of this behavior health team. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of that piece? And I don't know if you mentioned being able to get. Did you mention hormones?
Yes, I did mention hormones.
Now, is that? Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, does a young person need to have parental consent if they're? Yes. I mean, how does this?
The hormones and that piece is distributed to adults. So
got it. Okay.
To adults. So 18 plus.
Got it. Okay.
So not youth, any youth. They have to be 18 years of age plus to benefit from that particular program. But let's talk a little bit about the behavior health program. The behavior health program is a team of psychologists and therapists that is employed with the Ruth Ellis Center, who actually provide individual and group counseling to youth. Not so much group because of COVID. So they can schedule an appointment to speak with a therapist. And a lot of times young people come to the behavior health team because they're thinking about transitioning or talking about transitioning from one sex to another. And in order to do so, they have to meet with a psychologist or a therapist in order to do it. And so that's part of what the behavior health team does. They meet with young people, figure out not just for transitioning, for other things, for any type of mental health or any type of behavior health issue. So yes, we have on-site therapists that's available to talk through whatever issues young people think they might want to talk about.
Aside from the health aspect and really speaking a little bit more to wellness, are there any outside of the therapy, any other kind of physical or mental, or I mean, and this could be honestly even working out, a gym, yoga, any of that. Are any of those services or mindfulness or any of those things offered?
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because we offer a wellness program through yoga at the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls. That's a program that's ran by a trainer who is actually a volunteer. Most of our services are provided by volunteers. We try to get people that's in school or getting ready to graduate to actually come on board and help us out because we're a nonprofit organization. So we have a clinic. We work with Henry Ford Health Clinic, an on-site clinic in the Ruth Ellis Center where any student can come. And it's not even a sliding scale fee. Sometimes sliding scale, if students can't afford it, they can be seen for free to address any issue that they're having. One of the things that was really, really big prior to COVID, now COVID is a big deal, but it was HIV testing and STD testing. Free of charge to anybody, any student, any young person that had any question about that. They can be seen and treated on site at the Ruth Ellis Center.
Wow.
That was it, Kathie. That's a wow moment. All the services you guys offer is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just blown away, Kathie. I mean,
oh, Shannon, we do a lot of stuff for a lot of people with a little bit of money.
with a lot of love and support from folks in the city. That's awesome to hear. That's awesome to hear. So we were just wrapping up talking about the services and everything. I mean, she was like, yeah, I got 30 minutes of content.
I know, and she's doing such a great time sharing the information about what students have available to them in LGBT community, because as a youth in LGBT community, it's a struggle. It really is a struggle. So I think this is an amazing resource. I love what you're doing with the public school system. I'm really hoping that other school districts who are watching this will reach out to you and see how they can duplicate this. All the services that you provide to students is absolutely amazing. So I just want to applaud you. I think you are outstanding.
Thank you so much.
With all the work that you do, your passion, your love for the kids. I just think it's amazing. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And of course, now that I know, as Shannon said, y'all collecting detergent. You know,
we are.
I will be making sure I drop off some detergent and offer whatever I can to the young ladies. Because again, I understand when you're going through that process. And honey, every women's shelter always says they need personal items more so than anything. They just need personal items, right? So that's really huge. So I just want to say I thank you. You are like a rock star. Honestly, right, Shannon?
You know what? I was thinking about two things. The first thing is we're working with a population that is not only. I mean, I'm going to assume, Kathie, and are your children Black and or brown?
They are Black and brown. Yes.
Okay. So there's this intersectionality between like race and racism and gender identity and all of those components that come together. So there's some huge challenges that you work with, and I applaud you. I thank you for your work. You're an absolute hero. And I'm gonna actually work with Burkett to get some laundry detergent and some other items your way. So
thank you.
I'll make sure that like somebody will come by and drop them off for you.
Exactly.
Thank you. We definitely could use it. Feminine hygiene products as well, because that's what we do. So Absolutely. Thank you so much. One more thing that I wanted to mention is the unique thing about the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls program is that our focus is youth, but we don't turn any woman away. So we have an intergenerational component to that. So if you're a lesbian woman and you just need support, or you want some support, or you want to meet somebody, reach out to us and find out.
So are you saying meet somebody? Like you guys have a dating service as well? Because like you're going way beyond.
We have
that one missed me. Hold on.
We have activities. We have activities for adults as well, meaning like we have a paint and sip event coming up the 12th on February 12th. And it's not just for single people, it's for couples as well. But we have activities for adults and for children as well. So we don't turn anybody away. It's definitely an intergenerational component to the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls. So
Shannon, go check that out. It's actually a dating thing happening too for the adults here. She's like the whole 360.
It's a whole thing.
Listen, you turn into adults, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying, honey, you take wraparound service to a whole different level, right, Shannon?
A whole different level.
Whole different level.
She's like, we're offering dating services. Okay, guys, so we have to go to commercial break. And I just want to say, as we go to commercial break, I want us to seriously think about how we can support this organization just with basic needs. Is funding on top of other services that they need. So when we go to commercial break, we'll be right back. And I want you to think about how you can help her community. Hey guys, welcome back. For the last half of our show, I'm going to tell you I'm really excited about what you're doing in the LGBT community for our students. And I'm going to tell you, as a mom, it would be great to know that my kids had that type of support out there. Again, it's just so hard for our kids trying to really focus on being individuals and everything that you offer there. I kid you not, Kathie, it blows my mind. So, I just want to do a little shout out. Jermaine is watching. He said, "Good point, Shannon. Great work you are doing, Kathie." And of course, he says, "Hi, Chris." Hi, Jermaine. So I just want to say, everyone who's out there, please feel free to put any comments in this section of the conversation. We're going to go a little bit deep, and in this section of the conversation, thanks again so much, Jermaine, for tuning in with us. We want to discuss with you guys. A lot of the various things, and this is like the hot topic when I talk about things. It says, what are the major concerns you have regarding, the lack of services for the LGBT youth community? And when we talk about that, it's a large population of students right now who need the help and the support. So how are you guys providing that to students? So when we talk about, when I see what is one of the major concerns that you have, not outside of what you offer, but the lack of those services where they're not offered. What are your major concerns around that, Kathie?
One of my major concerns is for organizations in different school systems that don't have the resources or don't know where to go. What's happening with those students? We talked about bullying earlier in the session, and I have a major concern about safety with our young people in schools. Not so much because being identifying as an LGBTQ person is a challenge in itself. Being able to show up in the fullness of who you are in a public space or setting is a challenge in itself. So one of my concerns, and one of my major concerns, and I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's safety for our young people. And especially our young people that identify as LGBTQ plus people.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think safety is a big issue, especially when we're in a climate where we have a lot of racial issues going on. On top of that, we have students who basically are looked at indifferently because of just a physical appearance or the way they act or anything, and that's just, to me, it's just a deepening concern when we can't find that type of support within our own school walls. And that's like very serious to me. We've had the highest rate of suicides with our youth than we had over the past couple years. And I don't know whether it was due to COVID, but I know for sure we've had the highest rate. It was very concerning to me. One of the school districts, and this is public information, I'm not sharing anything that's not out there. DSLA school district started their year off with a young man who was in middle school who killed himself. He hung himself. And his sister found him hanging, and it was heartbreaking because for all intents and purposes, they said this is a really good kid. He never had any problems in the school district. They just could not understand. But that's the thing. Mentally, he was going through something. No idea that he could have shared it or had an opportunity to share. And I'll say this again, when you have programs like this connected to your schools, that gives children an opportunity, whether he was LGBTQ or not, he would have had another resource to talk to someone. And that's what this is about. I want us to understand this is not just about the LGBT community. This is about providing a resource in your school district that will help support students in having another ear, another voice, something to connect to that will help them gain a better understanding. I think his death could have been avoided. And it hurts me because he's one of thousands of students this year who decided to end their lives. And I'm just so concerned. So Kathie, I'm going to say to you, you are a hero in my book. I don't even know what's happening I just think you're a hero, and I wish I could throw a cape on you right now, and you could go from state to state helping people stand up this whole thing. So I'm going to ask you again, what is your major concern when you look at school districts that don't have this service available?
I'm just concerned about where students go for services. Do they have the information? Do they have the resources that students need? And I where do you go from there? Because if suicide is a concern, which it is, because students don't have an outlet, then reach out to somebody, reach out to us, try to find out how to start a gay straight alliance within your school system. What a gay straight alliance look like, get the education that you need to make that happen. So again, Christine, I know I sound like a broken record, but safety is definitely a concern of mine. When schools aren't aware of what's going on and they don't have the resources that they need to make the connection for youth.
What's an example of some of the things that has happened when you say safety is a concern?
Again, we talked about bullying. Bullying is a big one. Bullying, cyberbullying, depression, which is not often talked about. Depression is a big one. And just knowing that students don't have an outlet is a whole issue. To be able to self-identify, or if they're not getting the support they need at home, school is another outlet. So it's definitely important that schools try to get the information that they need to be to make everybody feel comfortable.
I like that. I think and that's the whole thing, is to make everyone feel comfortable. I think there's an education component that's really huge, just going out to schools and talking to them, so students who are not LGBTQ have a better understanding of who those students are and why they're doing what they're doing, and that will perhaps open their eyes to how they can be more supportive and reduce the number of bullying incidents, right? I think is when you don't know and you assume and you play around with your head what you think is happening versus the reality of what's happening. And I also think it'll probably help a lot of educators in that space understand too what's needed to support those students. Shannon, what's your thoughts on it?
I have quite a few thoughts. I'm going to answer a question that you didn't ask. And I think that developing the professional capacity of teachers and leaders in buildings is absolutely a key, right? And we talk about safety, but ultimately they are in control largely of creating the environment where bullying is not tolerated, where there is a gender inclusive curricula implemented, where programs, activities, practices that are consistent with policies that include all are in place. And I think ultimately, when you have policies that exclude, that segregate, that isolate students, you run into spaces where there's room for bullying. I think that adults create those spaces intentionally and unintentionally, but ultimately adults, and I thought about another thing, and that I'm going to go ahead and be quiet after that. I wish that, like, A, Kathie and her programming was everywhere.
Yeah.
B, I wish that it didn't need to be, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. I think didn't he just say a mouthful, Kathie?
He
like
did. You said a lot.
Wish there wasn't a need. I really wish there wasn't a need to be, but it definitely is because of what our students are managing at this point in their lives, and we want to do what we can. So Jermaine chimed in. He said awareness of this lack of services in the LGBT youth community is a concern to me. He said IMO. What does that mean? Awareness of their needs is key, and the services to support them is absolutely needed. And the school and the state administrators are capable of providing the necessary resources. What is IMO?
In my opinion, I believe
I'm
not quite there. It might be. I could be off.
It is, in my opinion.
Okay, because I just want to say, you guys know I'm not good with slang. I have to talk to my son, who's 19 going on 20. He goes, Mom, you are so lacking. Okay, in my
opinion, everything.
Exactly. So I need to stay more connected to my hipster so I can understand what's happening. And you know what you mean? You're right. I think a lot of these decisions can be made on a much larger scale, and then this can be executed across several school districts as a mandatory requirement for curriculum or awareness, right? And that's one of the things that I'm missing. We do a lot of different things, but I think sometimes we're missing the pulse. And whether we're open or accepting to what's transitioning or what's happening, we've got to understand we've got to do something about it. It's worth it. And Jermaine chimes in my opinion. Really, Jermaine? I got it now. Don't do it. He's over here leaving. This is what he says. I love my friends. I love Jermaine. We'll laugh
Jermaine is thorough. We appreciate you, Jermaine. Thank you for that clarity, because I wasn't sure.
Exactly. So it wasn't just me and Jermaine. It was like two of us. I think Kathie knew what was happening, but Shannon and I are maybe a little bit out of touch. So thank you for that. But I want to say, Kathie, definitely this is just not a one-time conversation. I would love to bring you back when we have our superintendents and school leaders on, so you can really talk about, how this will actually provide some equity within the school district, which is another. See, when we talk about equity and inclusion, and we talk about equity and the loss of education, this is one of those components where I think, Shannon, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. We often forget this is a part of equity, is providing that, right, to our students.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I don't think this component is a part of the conversation, is what I'm saying. I think this is like a missing component of that conversation. It would be great if this was a part of it, because this is serious at this point. I just think it's so needed. I see a lot of my young men, and one of the guys, he walks in my neighborhood, and I say to him all the time, he says, you know what, you're so much like my mom. And I said, why? He said, because you always ask me, what am I doing? What's going on and how I'm feeling? Whenever I see him, I don't care what time it is. If he's walking up and down the street, I ask that question. And one time he said to me, he says, you know what? He says, Miss Christine, I said, sure. He says, can I tell you? He said, I was offered an opportunity to go dance. And I said, dance where? And of course, it was at a gay club. And I said to him, honey, I don't think that's a good idea. You're 18. I just think you need to really think this through. And I don't think that's the way to immerse yourself in that community. I think you just need to take a moment, right, and stand back. And, he came back 2 weeks later. He knocked on my door. He gave me a hug. He says, I just want to say thank you. Everybody else was telling me to do it. Now, although he has identified himself as being a gay male, I just thought that wasn't the way to walk into that situation, right? You need to kind of sit back a little bit and kind of feel your way through before you start stripping your clothes off, right? That was just Kathie, was I wrong? I mean, I'm not you, Kathie. I'm not an expert. I was just telling him, if he was my son, this is what I would have advised him to do.
Listen, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to know something about something. And you're absolutely right. And, my parental advice is always, absolutely not. Why do you think that's a good idea? Let's start there. Again, I'm a mother as well, so it's a lot. It's a lot when people have to deal with. So,
and that's, to me, it was the equivalent of a young lady saying she wanted to go dance at a strip club. Absolutely. It was the equivalent to me. So I was just like, a no is a no. So as we wrap up this session of Educators Roundtable, and like I said, Kathie, you will be back, because I think what you're saying is like really a hot button right now. And I want to lend to you and Shannon so you guys can close us out. And then, of course, you guys know I'm going to do my closing and welcome everybody back for our next session. But you go ahead, Kathie. What's your closing statement to our community? Because we want them to make sure they know who you are and how to find you.
Thank you. My closing statement is, again, Christine and Shannon, thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed myself, even though I do not like talking on camera. But thank you so much. Again, my name is Kathie Griffin, and I am the director of the Center for Lesbian and Queer Women and Girls, which is located at 135 Hazelwood Street, Detroit, Michigan, 48202. My email is kgriffin, GRIFFIN, hyphenated futch, FUTCH, at RuthEllisCenter.org. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, guys, and just in case you didn't get that, her information will be posted in one commercial by itself, and to give you a little more information about the Ruth Ellis Center and all the services that they provide. And Shannon?
I think equity is equity. And I think that, unfortunately, there's shades of equity within those shades, and there's subpopulations within the populations. And when we talk about Black folks and we talk about brown folks, do we talk about women? Do we talk about the LGBTQ community? And how are we really within our community supporting one another? And I think that's something to think about and talk about.
I love it. As always, guys, this has been an amazing session of Educators Roundtable. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session. And be sure to join us next week when we continue the conversation, part 8 of Education Equity. Education lost or not? What are your thoughts? Have a good evening, and we'll see you next week at the Educators Roundtable.